Hello, everyone. Welcome to the off-script interview on Basis Point Insight. Some real talk on the issues shaping our daily lives. We'll today take up something that touches us every day, yet rarely gets the spotlight it deserves: infrastructure. Highway upgrades, urban road construction, buzzing airports. Projects such as these are supposed to make life easier, but more often than not, they're leaving people frustrated and they're venting online. The major pain points now are NHAI's recent increase of toll charges by 5%, the unending chaos around road concretization, and indeed a sudden hike in airport fees. So, what's wrong? Why is something meant to help us actually ending up as a source of public anger? To break it all down, we have the perfect guest, Sharmila Chavali, an infrastructure and project finance expert who's held key positions in the Ministries of Finance and Railways. She's someone who understands not just financing and policy behind these projects, but also the human response to it. Let's dig into what it takes to not just build better, but build trust. Welcome, Sharmila, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me, Ranjana.
Now let's come to the point that's really brought us here. We're seeing huge anger venting on social media against poor or delayed implementation of infrastructure projects. What, in your view, is driving this trust deficit?
It's a mix of things. We have something new that is social media. This gives everyone a platform. It's actually a megaphone. So they have the right now to call out problems, but it also tends to amplify negativity. Everyone shares news of the one pothole that they hit, not the 20 smooth kilometers that they drove before that. And citizens are also more aware of their rights now. They ask, if I'm paying tolls, why does this highway look like a war zone? And on the other side, they're actually quite right. It's not wrong. Poor infrastructure has real costs. It could lead to accidents, longer commutes, higher vehicle maintenance, even lost opportunities and lost business. So it is a combination of both these things.
Do you think this is more a communication failure or a deeper issue of governance and accountability?
It is both. One is poor communication because government doesn't have the tendency to be a good communicator once a decision is taken. They just go on to the next bit of business that they have to do in government. But what happens is that there is also a governance issue. For instance, if a toll road is crumbling, if there are a lot of potholes, that's a governance problem. The contract wasn't enforced. If a toll booth is broken by vandals, that's a law and order problem, administrative problem. But if the government doesn't explain why tolls are extended, for example, if they don't say they're adding lanes so the tolls are being extended, etc., people assume the worst. And we are also terrible at celebrating wins or the good things that happen. Like suppose we have a rare case where the road is doing very well, we tend not to talk about that. So communication on one side, on the government side, and on the other side also deeper governance issues which relate basically to contract enforcement. So yes. Excuse me.
So, highway tolling, you've heard, it is a hot button issue right now. People say they are paying more and getting less. Sometimes long after the concession periods have ended. We've seen first world tolls for third world roads, stuff like that. Is there a structural fix to this perception of perpetual tolling, as they say?
Ranjana, it's like this. There is already a fix that is inbuilt into the contracts. For instance, PPP contracts do have clauses to end tolling early. If, say, profits increase, they also have a provision in the contracts where the tolling is commensurate with the kind of work they're doing, and they have severe penalties built in for contracts. But here's the catch. Roads age, traffic grows, maintenance costs rise. So yes, sometimes extending tolls is justified. It's how we do it. If you're charging, say, 500 rupees at a toll plaza, the road had better feel like I'm driving in a Rolls Royce. So you do need that. And look at the numbers. India's toll collection hit 1.4 lakh crore rupees last year. But NHAI's own reports show that only 30% gets reinvested in immediate maintenance. Compare that to, say, a country like France. 50% of their almost, I think, 11 billion euros that it gets from this is reinvested in maintenance. So the fix is already there. It's how we do it, how we enforce the penalties on contractors. And also the other thing that we have to do is ensure that the standards are being met, which means we have to monitor. This is something that we tend not to do once we, when we give out contracts, when we're moving to the next project. We tend to have a shortage of, in the government, of staff also to do this. So these are the problems that we have. All the links are already there. The policies are already there. It's just a question of administering that.
Yeah, yes, and timeliness is one of the major, pain points that we see. So, do you think any kind of a standardized, time-bound toll policy, across states would help bring in some public confidence?
There is already a highway toll policy. It's a very, very well-written document. You should see it. It's available on the NHAI and the Road Transport Ministry's websites. But you have to understand that that is the basis on which tolls are charged. It also classifies who pays what. That kind of a structure is given. But a one-size-fits-all rule for fixing tolls on a road, of fixing tolls on roads, is not going to work. A rural highway with, say, 10,000 cars a day may not be able to fund repairs without tolls, okay? While a busy urban expressway may generate surplus. So transparency is key. If you have a dashboard, say, showing why tolls are needed, continued, your 50 rupees funds this resurfacing this road every monsoon or something, it helps. And that variability is essential. For instance, if you see the Delhi-Mumbai expressway, it generates about 18 crore in tolls. Okay, it handles about 150,000 vehicles. This is a daily basis. But a rural highway, there's one in, say, Rajasthan, we take a random, it may barely cover maintenance costs with 2 lakhs per day earnings. So then a flat national policy on all roads will either bankrupt the rural roads or it will overcharge urban commuters. So the solution isn't uniformity. It's to be hyper transparent in accounting. Japan has a monthly toll revenue disclosure. We should have something like this. It would really help.
So, could we get some detail on what are these transparency tools or disclosures that that will make a big impact in this?
Yeah. One is knowing each road that you're traveling on. What is the basis of that? The toll, how the road was done. If it's a PPP road, you have some kind of a ticker tape which you have on a lot of highways now, showing who the contractor is, the concession period, the concession amount, how much has been collected, etc. The second thing is like in airports where you have these, the flights update. If you could have something showing on that dashboard, this much of the money that was earned went towards so much, it went towards revenue expenditures, etc. This would also help. And whenever tolls are increased, I think it would be a great idea for it to be announced beforehand. Now, right now, the NHAI follows a hybrid policy. In some cases, it ends the tolling when the PPP contract is over. In some cases, it extends it. And normally, it would do this after a very educated analysis of what that road is providing. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with tolls connected from this road subsidizing something that is being done on another road, including on rural roads, say, for instance. So if this is publicized road-wise, I think people, once they're aware of this, will tend to complain a little less, provided the caveat always is the quality of the road should be maintained.
Yeah, so what you're trying to say is you have to explain the why behind,
Yes.
the toll or the
Precisely.
surcharge or, the delay, whatever be the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have these project trackers, which, like with the toll revenue backgrounds and annual citizen reports, like a corporate ESG report, you have this on the roads. Incidentally, Mumbai's coastal road project, there's a lot of criticism of whether it should have been done, etc. But now that it's there, it does issue this update on the citizens report on the road. And people still complain, but at least they know what they're complaining about.
Yes, that is something that is really occupying a lot of attention right now, the road. Right? Do you think it is possible or desirable to tie toll rates to actual road quality, like say lower tolls if maintenance, the standards slip? Is this feasible in the current PPP framework?
In the PPP framework, what happens is the contractor is penalized and it's very heavy. Sometimes if he doesn't do the correction within a defined period, he has to pay 1 lakh rupees a day. That's a huge amount, right? So that is on the contract enforcement side. The quality of the maintenance is something that is normally audited in a PPP contract by a third party or engineer who does this. Those reports have to be seen by both sides. But you can't have, again, a direct road quality toll rate linking because technically you can do it, but it becomes very messy. The contract already penalizes poor maintenance. If you tie the toll rates directly to, say, the potholes, you can have counterclaims from the contractor saying the monsoon damage is beyond our control. It was unprecedented rain. So then you get into arbitration, etc. Instead, it is better to announce the rebates proactively. Say, for instance, for whatever reason, and you accept as authority the reason that for the next month, say, this road cannot be repaired. Then you should proactively announce, sorry, repairs delayed. The next month, tolls will be 20% off, 30% off some. That will also buy a lot of goodwill for the authority. That's something that they can think of. And worldwide, this is done. For instance, even on roads that are not, which are doing well, Spain, for instance, it offers discounts on off-peak cars to toll users. Maybe we could think of that dynamic pricing, but then we would also have to look into like our trucks move only in the night. So how do you safeguard against accidents, etc.? We'd have to take all this into consideration.
When we go from the policy side, lots of projects, most projects actually will start with great intent. But when it comes to execution, they falter. So, from your experience, what do you see as the biggest bottleneck between the intent and the delivery?
Okay, there'll always be some projects that don't do well. There'll be some projects that are way beyond the curve and do excellently. But on average, when you have a lot of failures, there's one type of failure which we are unfortunately seeing a lot of late. For instance, arguably the best infrastructure contractor in India. There's one company that comes to mind every time we think of that, and that company is working all over the world. If they build a tunnel which has seepage and waterlogging within the first year, there's something very wrong in the quality. So one is the quality standards that have. But the other general problems we find is unrealistic timelines. That optimism bias that is built in, where everyone loves to inaugurate projects. So you say that you announce 100 kilometers of roads in 1 year, and the contractors then start cutting corners, so quality suffers. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to phase projects, prioritize the high traffic corridors first, and also ensure that all your approvals are in place. There's no need, once the project is allowed, to then start going for approvals, etc. Then also be very, very harsh in blacklisting contractors who fail, publicly shame delays. I think Bengaluru had a worst road Twitter campaigns recently. That kind of public shaming also helps. The other thing that we have to look at is the planning fallacy of pushing more ambitious targets than we can actually deliver. The MORTH I think 2 years ago, it gave a report. 73% of delayed projects missed the deadlines due to unrealistic timelines, which it's not the budget that affected it or the quality. So if you knew this, why did you encourage very, very ambitious timelines? You take Mumbai's coastal road, which we were just talking about. The initial bids promised 8 kilometers per year construction. Global best practice, global benchmark for this similar reclamation projects is an average of 3 kilometers. So why did you overshoot? So this optimism bias hurts us. Every 1% delay increases project costs by about 0.3%. So we have to be very careful about this. This is, I think, the main thing. And the other is also don't push the contractor when you see that things are slipping. We are setting up contractors to fail even before the first cement or concrete truck arrives at the spot.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. You spoke about the best global practices. You cited some countries, where certain things have really been successful in such projects. Can any such, best practices be adapted at the municipal or the state level without actually a national policy change? Is it possible?
Good question. And actually, yes, most of the things can be done because the national policy is actually it facilitates a lot of things. And I'll first talk about the global best practices and then say what we are doing. In Japan, they put roads on a diet. They narrow the car lanes to add bike paths or pedestrian space. Pune is just experimenting with this. This is something that we should try instead of building more road space for motorists. The other thing is something we have a variation on. In the UK, they have something called bonded contracts, where the contractor pays a penalty upfront, and this is refunded only if they deliver on time. We have something like this. We have performance guarantees. Some of them are linked to milestones. So the performance guarantee, that part is released when that milestone is achieved. So we can do something like this. And then we can also look at some reforms in how we evaluate contractors maybe. Australia has a very interesting scheme. It's called the realistic scheduling bonus in its tenders. Contractors who have performed better than the laid down norm, they get a 2% bid preference in the next set of bids. This will be controversial if we do it, but we can think of something like this. Because after it was implemented, one state in Australia, New South Wales, it reported, I think, about a third fewer delays in project delivery. So we could think of variations in this. Then we have Kerala is also doing something on the liquidated damages. We have a liquidated damages clause in all our contracts. What it is doing, Kerala is experimenting with this, is liquidated damage LD calculators. That is an automated penalty system based on daily delay metrics. This could transform things. The technology already exists. The Indian Institute of Science it has a project management lab which has already prototyped this for the BBMP, the Bengaluru Municipal Palika's road tenders. So these are all things that we should be looking at actively and sort of broad basing in all contracts.
So this doesn't need a national level.
No. This is local contract details. If you even look at the PPP, that is PPP templates that are put up by the DEA, these always caveat them saying that you have to adjust this to the specific project you're doing. So these are local things that you can do. You just need buy-in from all the stakeholders.
So all of us keep harping about, the kind of disruption that, big urban projects lead to, the road upgrades or, metro work or whatever. So why do you think, Indian cities are struggling to implement phased rollouts, especially areas which have very dense population? What is?
No one wants to be.
And I would like to ask, specifically about a city like Mumbai or Bangalore, which is really suffering a lot.
In Bangalore, I think the problem is more on traffic. And there's one also, basic flaw in how we do urban planning. We are not looking at arterial facilitation of mass transport. Buses, trams, rapid rail. Metros, okay. Metros are actually not justified everywhere, but we've gone into this very macho. Everyone wants a metro, so it's announced even without justification, and most of them are going to be white elephants. That's a separate issue. But why aren't we looking at smooth BRTs? We don't implement the BRT corridors well, and then we blame BRT saying it's useless. So your road traffic problem will continue as long as you haven't addressed that part, increasing your rapid rail, local trains facility, etc. So that is one of the issues. So Bengaluru suffers a little bit from that. Mumbai, I think the problem is that this is everything, everywhere, all at once. It's decided to dig up all the roads all at once. That you should have phased. And what you have to do is digging up one street causes chaos. So what officials tend to do is you delay everything until everything is ready. It's never going to happen. You have to phase it. The you can announce things, but unless you have prepared, say, the arterial roads first, you announce zone 1, phase 1, we will do all the arterial roads. Say phase 2, we will do the residential roads. Phase 3, we'll do the last mile connectivities and communicate it. This is what we are failing to do. I think, and then we also have to find the money for this. So we have to budget for it beforehand.
So you spoke about, informing people about the phased rollout of such projects. Do you think there's a case for institutionalizing citizen consultations when there's a big public project coming up, in their locality? And could it actually improve outcomes or only delay it further? There is this point too.
Okay. This will have to be done in moderation. For instance, you will listen to the affected shop owners or residents, but you can't have NIMBYism creep in where everything is vetoed. Mumbai's Coastal Road held 200 plus meetings. Result? Delays. But yes, also there were fewer lawsuits. So yes, you do have to do this public consultation, but also draw a line. And you can't have like everyone interfering in everything. So beyond a point, you shouldn't do that. And also be extremely proactive in updating people. Chennai Metro gives WhatsApp updates on the progress. These are things that are very easy to do nowadays. Why don't we do it? This will always help. It can also result in a lot of people who are very reactionary, who will start criticizing you. But slowly you will find that this communication, it opens up channels for people to be more accepting of what's happening. But again, that is provided your initial planning was right, not digging up everything all the time.
Okay, which brings us to the question that so PPP projects, the projects we are talking about, they have been evaluated on financial closure and delivery timelines traditionally. Now, after we discuss the communication and these aspects, should we be expanding that definition to include public satisfaction, service quality, transparency?
Ranjana, the pity is, I think most people don't understand how good a good PPP concession agreement is, because this is precisely on the basis of which the concession agreement is drawn up. There's something called key performance indicators, key KPIs like you have elsewhere. For instance, take an airport. In an airport, one of the key metrics is how much time it takes for a passenger to move from when he or she enters the main gate to reaching the security check. And a time is laid down. The time is laid down as a KPI. And the airport is designed with these flows. So, and after that is done, there's a requirement for, I think, monthly or quarterly feedback being taken from all the passengers, users. They do this. They have to. It's part of the contract. Unfortunately, if you don't enforce it, the concessionaire will slack off. Anyone would. The third-party audit, which is done by the engineer, that engineer may slack off, and the person who's supposed to be monitoring it back in the authority has moved on to new projects. So is not. So this is where the monitoring is not being done. All the public satisfaction indicators are built in as performance indicators in PPP contracts. So poor PPP contracts are given a bad name without anyone really enforcing what is already there. One of the things that they can do is, like in airports, you have highway contracts track pothole repairs. Okay, so one thing that I could probably do is, you find on a lot of social media, everyone is tagging the Prime Minister for all these kind of problems. Maybe they should start tagging the concessionaire. Once you do that, you'll find that the stocks of concessionaires who are not doing very well tend to underperform. There's one party, IRB, the shares dropped about 8% after there was a viral toll, hashtag toll fail campaign in 2023. Then if you have NHAI's 2024 guidelines for contracts, they have included, one of the KPIs is social media response time. So these things are happening, and this is how you get the response.
So the rules are all there. It's all about enforcement. It's all about
always
and audits and being on your feet. Yeah. So I just have we've spoken enough about what would be the ideal scenario, what should be done, and but tell me, Sharmila, if you were to advise a chief minister or the Central Urban Development Minister, what would be your top 3 reforms to make infrastructure, like urban infrastructure, more trusted?
I wouldn't call it reforms, but just start using the tools that we have that is moving with the times. For instance, a transparency dashboard, have real-time project updates plus toll revenue use details posted on that, have tech linked penalties. You start using satellite imagery, drones, etc., to auto fine tune delayed projects and start monitoring them, and then have the reports on that, and then also have public report cards when you're looking at something and you're rating it, your satisfaction level on that. Now, this you don't have to get into very excruciating detail. Everyone will get bored about that. But we also have to remember that infrastructure basically isn't about contracts, it's about trust. Fix the trust and the first will follow. Okay, so I think that's how I would approach it.
That makes perfect sense. Which brings us to the end of our discussion on such a crucial issue. And so, as we discussed, building infrastructure is not about concrete and capital. It's about, as you said, communication, credibility, course correction. If India is to realize its infrastructure ambitions that are, I think, key to Viksit Bharat, trust might be the most important thing, that we need to engineer. So thank you so much, Sharmila, for your deep insights and for reminding us that how we build matters just as much as what we build. That's I think, my big takeaway from our discussion. And thank you so much for being with us at Basis Point.
Thank you. And the next time you hit a pothole, just remember that we shouldn't think of roads like they're temporary. We should start communicating like they're permanent. Okay? Thank you, Ranjana.
Thank you so much, Sharmila. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.